Here's 6 ways to get a sponsor as a race car driver. I get DMs all the time asking, how can I get a sponsor to drive my kart? Or how can I get a sponsor to get in a race car? Some people, a sponsorship might mean that you get to race for free for one race. And to other people, a sponsorship might mean that you get to race for free for a whole season. To others though, a sponsorship just might mean you're not racing for free, but you get a portion of your expenses paid for. And at the very top, you might have people expecting a salary to race. So I've been racing for 3 years in 3 series, over 60 competitors. And I've actually interviewed many of them about what they do in order to pay for racing. I mostly post those Instagram videos at Beilicke, so if you're interested in seeing those, follow me there. But I've also interacted and spent a couple hours with folks like Chip Ganassi, who's one of the top race team owners in America. And so from that experience, that's what I'm giving you in this video, is what I've learned on how people get sponsors as race car drivers. The first way comes from a story where I heard somebody was really good at winning in karts. There was a couple manufacturers competing in the series, and most of the top karts were one manufacturer. Luckily, this driver was very, very good that he approached the manufacturer that was not doing well, and he said, you'd sell a lot more karts if you won. He actually talked that kart manufacturer into letting him have a free ride, then he would win with their kart. And people would see, hey, this first place guy is winning with this kart that not a lot of people have. Maybe that'll help him sell more karts. And that's exactly the deal structure in this case of how that went down. Was the kart actually better than the other one? Maybe, maybe not. It seems like a lot of the factor was the driver, but when people see that machinery in first place, they can't help but ask themselves, is it the kart? And then they make the purchase. So whether you are doing well in racing or not, you're always trying to provide value to the manufacturer. The audience in this case is just the other racers, right? The 20 competitors that are competing in these karts. So you're wanting to encourage them to buy equipment. Another version of that would be in the racing that I do with NASA, which is club level racing. A lot of the tire manufacturers actually have a contingency program. And so the tires that I run are Hoosier on my car. And if I win first place and there's at least 5 competitors in that race, Hoosier will give me 2 free tires. You could do one weekend on a set of tires, and the total cost to buy them and mount them might be $2,500. So you could see a portion of my racing expenses are covered there if I do well. So it's really nice that those contingency programs exist, and those are the easiest to take advantage of because the structure is already there with a group like NASA, the National Autosport Association. You can look on their website what all their contingency programs are with tire manufacturers or maybe some other parts too, and then you can just take advantage of them as you use their products and succeed on the podium. The second one is gonna be a driver search. So back in the day, there used to be a lot more of these than in current times, but the way they would work is like a 50-50 raffle. You might pay $3,000 to compete in a driver search, and the winner would actually take half of the total proceeds. So if they collected $300,000 from all the drivers who tried, if you win, then you get $150,000 for racing. Those aren't quite around with that structure anymore, but I have 3 examples of recent driver searches that are going on or have gone on this year that I wanted to tell you about. And the first one is PT Autosport. They actually have an aspiring driver shootout. It's the ultimate test for future race car drivers. And there's 888 total entrants allowed. There's 88 applications for the second round, and then 8 finalists selected that go out to New Jersey Motorsports Park, and they run through different sessions with a coach and data review, and then they make fake marketing interviews as well, and they see who gets selected to be the top driver and win the prize. So the grand prize is $250,000 with $50,000 guaranteed and the remaining amount to follow if performance targets are achieved. Then second place is $10,000 to go towards a racing school or opportunity to further your career. And third place is $5,000 to go towards the same. So previous winners was Henry Drury in 2022, actually raced against him in the Ginetta Challenge this year, I guess 3 years after he won. Sim racer Beilicke wins the 4th annual PT Autosport Aspiring Driver Shootout. He's holding the $250,000 check, which again, $50,000 is guaranteed, and we'll see if he's able to hit the performance throughout the year in his racing that he's gonna do going forward with PT Autosport. So congrats, but there's a couple other shootouts as well. The next one I was gonna tell you about is the Mazda Shootout. So it evaluates drivers on multiple criteria over 2 days, including on-track performance like lap times, data analysis and coachability, as well as off-track skills such as interview abilities and business acumen. The 2025 winner was just announced. Max Stallone won the Mazda Shootout, and he's actually a member at the racetrack we're at today, Harris Hill Raceway, outside of Austin, Texas. But Max won the $150,000 prize. He said that it was a bit of a shock because the way that it works is there's 12 finalists and they received 2 track sessions on the last day of the 2-day competition. And he said that he was not invited to drive on the last session. The reason is because the judges knew without a doubt that Max should be the winner based on his performance in the previous day and a half. And so when they announced that the second place winner was Ethan Lampe, he was like totally blown away because in his mind, Ethan was his biggest competitor. And then he was surprised that he was selected. So it's actually, you know, one of the most competitive shootouts there is, according to this IMSA article that I'm looking for. And so congrats to Max. I hope to have you on to learn more about this experience so we could share with you guys. The final one is actually part of Ginetta, which is the manufacturer of my race car, but they're global. They actually run with SRO Motorsport Group, which is the biggest race promoter around the world. It's actually a fully funded GT World Challenge seat with a customer racing team, and Ginetta is one of the teams participating in this. It is for any silver graded driver under 30 years old, and it is open to drivers from Silver and Pro-Am crews contesting in the full 2026 GT2 Europe season. So this one is definitely gonna be more than a $150,000 check to compete at that level. However, it seems like it's not open to beginners with no experience like the previous 2 were. This is for somebody who's already planning on doing that series, but then could apply to have it funded and paid for. So these are 3 opportunities to have a driver shootout as part of your way to get a sponsor as a race car driver. So the next thing I wanted to tell you guys is if you're doing racing yourself and you're really good, and then you get into coaching, you can actually get paid to coach. And I pay a coach, it's very valuable. But as you have a student that progresses in racing, eventually they'll get to a point where there's a Pro-Am series. So to compete in the actual Pro-Am class, then you have to have 2 drivers and one has to be pro and one has to be amateur. The example of this would be the Lamborghini Super Trofeo in IMSA. The races are an hour long, and typically a Pro-Am class driver would have the student as the amateur and the coach as the pro. And so they switch drivers in a pit stop window that's mandatory between like 25 and 35 minutes into the race is the window where they have to switch. So that can be something that you have in the back of your mind down the road as an opportunity if you were to get into coaching, because typically the coach receives payment for the coaching, but if he's also the fastest driver that the guy knows, there could be a deal worked out where the coach drives for free and either does waive his coaching fee or maybe actually still accepts some of a coaching fee. But that's a great opportunity for somebody who's very experienced and at the pro level on how they could get sponsored to race. The 4th way you might get a sponsor as a race car driver is brokering a deal. So I actually was approached by a NASCAR driver and he said, hey, do you want to sponsor my car? It would cost, you know, $20,000 to $40,000 just for our race at Indianapolis. And I was kind of shocked. I was like, whoa, that race is coming up in like a month. I didn't know you could just do like a sponsor for one race. And to me, it didn't really make sense to put my logo on TV because my product isn't used by consumers who's gonna be watching that. So I didn't do it. And I looked at the race and unfortunately he wasn't driving. So that was kind of an eye-opener for me that sponsorship isn't always a year-long thing. It can be like race to race. But later, an Xfinity NASCAR driver approached me, but in a completely different way, and he was gonna broker a deal. And to me, this just made a lot more sense for a business like mine. Here's what he said. He said, David, we've been following each other on Instagram for a while, and I would just really love to connect with you on a way I think we could both grow together. And I was like, yeah, cool, let's schedule a call. And the first 15 minutes of the call, he did nothing but just ask about my business. Like, when did you start DealMachine? What's your customer doing? What are they doing with the data you provide on properties and consumers? What types of top customers do you have? And eventually he got to this point. He's like, well, I'm gonna think about who might, be one of your data purchasers. I know you have plans for a high scale level of like 8,000 to maybe 20,000 a year. And I'm gonna think about who that might be. And if I find somebody, can I introduce them to you? And if you do a deal, can I take 10% of that and I'll put your sticker on my car for no cost at all? That's just icing on the cake. And I was like, absolutely. Who wouldn't say yes to something that was so thoughtful and made sense? Because I'm actually getting revenue even before the sticker winds up on his car. And so DealMachine actually has thousands of customers that pay $100 a month for finding what houses might be good to flip. It's usually house flippers that want to send direct mail marketing to people that might be behind on their taxes, they might own a rundown house, they might appreciate the speed and convenience of a cash offer, and they use data to figure out who those houses are that they should send mail to, and that's exactly what DealMachine does. Now, on the higher end of things, we actually have some lead providers that set appointments for real estate investors or even roofing and solar companies. And those types of businesses buy a lot more data. And so now that we have that larger customer, that's where it could make sense for a race car driver to broker a deal with somebody that he knows that runs one of those types of roofing companies, for example. So the higher the dollar amount would allow a deal to be brokered. That was just a great example of how you can approach sponsorship for a company that's less consumer-based and more business-focused, like DealMachine is. The fifth example of how you can go racing is illustrated by a guy I haven't met before but have seen online. That is Suellio. As far as I know, he was actually a sim racer, and in college, in order to pay the bills, he would teach other people how to sim race. He competed in a Canadian sim racing challenge and won first place. And he got a call from somebody who owns a real race team, and they asked if he wanted to try getting in a real car. And he said yes. Now, his first 30 minutes in the Radical were pretty rough, he said, because the pedal on the sim felt quite different than the brake pedal in real life. But after that, he got very comfortable and he felt confident that his sim racing skills were translating perfectly in the real world. In 2024, he bought his own Radical and competed in the real life Radical Cup, and he won. And this year, I've noticed that he's competing in IMSA in the TCR cars. So I think it is an amazing example because the sponsor now on his race suit and his car, or at least his race suit, is the Almeida Racing Academy, which is how he teaches people to race. I don't personally know Suellio. I hope I've gotten his story right. And if there's any corrections and he sees this, I hope he'll correct me in the comments. I thought it was worth sharing as a very inspiring example for those of you who want to know if there's a real path for you to go racing. Number 6 is you can start a business outside of racing, but still use a portion of the proceeds to race. That's exactly what I've done with DealMachine. Whenever I was a kid, I was inspired by kids in high school that drove really nice cars. And I thought, what do their parents know that mine don't, that allowed them to spend that kind of money on a nice car? And it turns out, the number one way to build wealth is through starting a business. And for me, I was very interested in real estate investing. I actually have 19 rental properties and I didn't have a lot of money to buy them, but I found rundown properties. Then I got a loan in order to buy the property and fix it up. And I created, $50,000 worth of value doing that. I also made a software to make it easier to find those types of properties. And the software is DealMachine. And that has helped thousands of investors as well. So if you're an investor or a house flipper or a wholesaler and you want to know what I'm doing with the number one tool for finding and marketing for distressed property leads, click the link below to find what we're doing for the Black Friday demos specifically. But the big takeaway I hope that you guys have is that starting a business is a huge possibility. It's the number one way that racers at my level pay for their racing. Invest in yourself, because just like any other sport, in tennis, I bought the racket, I paid for court time, I paid for a coach, and the same is true for anyone who's become pro. You buy those things first, but in motorsports, it's just a little bit more expensive. Instead of a racket, it's a car, and instead of new strings, it's tires. And you could put your logo on the car and use the car as an asset, as a way to talk about what you do in a way that's not quite so pushy and salesy, because it's interesting. It includes your passion of racing, and it also is an opportunity to talk about your business. Whether you're ready to get on the track today or you need to work on your money-making skills, you might want to know 10 different ways to go racing and what they cost? And if so, that is why I made this video. I talk about how to get on track for just $100 or all the way up to $1.5 million, which is what it might cost to race something like the Porsche Carrera Cup.